Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Haverford Township Board of Commissioners work session for August 5th, 2024, here in our meeting room. Sitting in for us today, our Assistant Township Manager, Amy Cuthbertson. Ms. Cuthbertson, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Gondek.
Present.
Commissioner Forste-Grubb. Here. Commissioner McCluskey.
Here.
Commissioner Cavender. Here. Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner McCollum is absent.
Absent.
Commissioner Trombetta. Here. And Commissioner Holmes.
Here. Deputy Chief, would you do the honors?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
The first item on our agenda this evening is the Stadium Locker Room Renovation Concept Plan. We have an entire host of folks who are going to assist in that presentation, so I welcome everybody up, either one at a time or the group, and we'll go from there. And if you could introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Well, hello, my name is Barbara. Commissioners, I'm also on the Ice Ring Advisory Board here in Haverford Township and have been for a number of years, too many to mention. On behalf of the Ice Ring Advisory Board, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for providing you with the information that we have tonight. And we all know that the stadium is an asset in our community. It provides many services for our youth as well as our senior citizens, everybody in between, people who want to go out for the evening and be entertained with their families. They go skating, they learn many disciplines of ice skating there at the ring. So it's a great place to meet and exercise in our community here. Several months ago, we were tasked with the duty to sit down and look at renovations for the stadium and see what things would take us from the past to the present. Well, we were excited about that as the board because we sat at many meetings and talked about things that could be improved in the stadium. So we thought it was also a good idea to go out and canvass some of our user groups. We have plenty of figure skaters there, we have hockey teams and so forth. So we decided to get a survey together and send it out to them and ask them what they thought could be improved, as well as what their priority was, considering we would have restraints in the budget. Well, needless to say, when we got the information back, it blended well with what we were thinking. And it's funny how the priority came right up to the top. Many of the people expressed a concern about the lack of, well, the locker rooms, as we know, were insufficient. They were outdated. They needed a lot of repair work, and they really didn't utilize the space very well. So we did want to concentrate on the locker rooms, but one of the big things that occurred was the fact that today there are a lot more young females that are playing ice hockey and that figure skate, so we don't have sufficient room for those people when they come into the ring, and we really need to modify the locker rooms to give them a place where they could feel safe and secure at the stadium. So we went ahead and we prioritized some of the things that we thought, and I should move this screen here. We decided that, many of the things that we talked about were things that are pretty standard, the building code, safety and security, everything that we try to suggest, we always make sure it conforms with that. But some of the other things like the locker rooms where we have the male and the females and how they had to be separate, the mixed gender teams, we wanted to make sure that that was covered as well. So here we are. Our proposed recommendation for the renovation project has taken all of this into consideration, and Renovating the female locker rooms has become our highest priority here. We want to provide each gender with sufficient locker room space and the ability for them to feel comfortable and safe in our facility. So we hope that you will support this effort. You're going to see some of the ideas that we spoke about, and we hope that you will support it and consider this project and enable us to keep this gem in our community. So thank you.
Here, thank you.
Our next speaker will be Joe Powell, who is from our architectural firm BKP in Philadelphia that our board appointed. He's going to take us through some renderings of the proposed design.
Well, thank you. Saved me that introduction. Let me get to my slides. So, the existing building plan, right, from the early 70s. Lots changed since the 70s. As we've just heard, lots of different user groups, much more use, a lot more people using the building than were anticipated in the 70s. But it's kind of, how do I want to phrase this? I have it. It looks like there's nothing here, like you can't do anything with the space, that there's just no way to do it. But we've taken a look at reversing some thoughts of traditional ways to look at things, and there is space, and there's a way to make this work with all the things that the user groups have asked for. So in the new plan, what we're going to be doing is making 4 independent locker rooms instead of 4 and 2 configuration, and each of the independent locker rooms will have bathrooms that are separate, so there's no more sharing. We're going to take away the skate hut and put 2 change rooms up at the top corner. And then we're also going to use the bleacher area by the side door as a dedicated figure skating space, turn that into a figure skating locker room, something they don't have now. And then we're going to renovate the existing figure skating locker room / mechanical room into another change room. So detail-wise, we made a 3-dimensional model of the space so you can get a little sense of how things are going on, coming together. So I'll start with the figure skaters. We've got space for 20 skaters at a time. We've got 3 private change areas. Think, your changing room at a department store. One of them accessible. The other 2 are normal size. And then the figure skaters will have their own restroom facilities and a shower that are their own to use. They also, in this configuration, have the ability now to go past the bleacher stair and go right out onto center ice for a performance rather than looping around and coming in where the audience is. So they can come in and off the ice right at center ice and the center doors. The other side of that room that we just looked at, in the change area, we'll have a wall of mirrors so that the skaters can work on moves, positioning and stances and things, and they can also check their costumes before they go out for a performance. And we also have a makeup counter in the bathroom area so that they can check, get ready for a performance. I don't know if a lot of you know, but a lot of performances require adding hair, a lot of makeup, and a lot of things like that. So we've got a space for that to happen now. So they're not doing it in the lobby like they do now. In the change room 3, which is adjacent to where the figure skating room is, so you can see we're reconfiguring. There's still a bath and there's a shower facility. We're not going to take away the water heater, and we're not going to take away the backflow preventer that's in the room. We're not spending money on things like that. But we are creating a little more usable space than what's there now, and it's not going to be shared with toilet paper and janitor's equipment. It'll also have its own private change room as well. Now, both of these, in this change room, the stall that we're making all serves as the accessible changing space. We'll also have room for a bench for 3 folks. So this is very flexible. We could use this for boys that are on a girls figure skating team. We could use it for referees during a hockey, or if girls hockey wants to use a shower, they can come to this. It's a little logistically, it's not the greatest, but it was the compromise that was made over the course of the discussions. And then the locker rooms, you can see that we've got 4 locker rooms. Each has seating for 20, including an accessible space, which de facto will become the goalie's seat. Each bathroom has 2 showers, toilets, and a sink. Each locker room has 2 showers, toilets, and a sink. They're all independent, so with the 4, you can have changeover very rapidly during the course of a hockey day. What's also nice is that if you've got an all-girls team, they use this independently. And again, there's no sharing, so we don't have to worry about the problems you have now. Then we've also, where the skate hut is, like you can see we've created the 2 change rooms. It has a bench for 3, it's got a private change room. Again, that serves as the de facto accessible space and/or now the goalie space. There's no bathroom in these. The logistics of bringing utilities to this part of the building was just expensive, so we didn't do that. And with the group, the advisory council, this was the compromise that was made. Another view of the locker rooms. It's a very simple plan, but we used space that right now you won't even think that was possible to use. So I think we've pretty much solved everything that the advisory group has asked us to solve, and didn't expand the footprint of the building. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take this one from my seat, if the board is fine with that. The next logical question may be, how do we pay for this, or what is our funding plan? So we have had some conversations about this.
I'll move it.
Thank you. If you'll recall, when the board authorized a borrowing back in 2023, there was a component for the stadium improvements, from which we've done the chiller replacement, we've replaced the cooling towers, and there was an allocation for the locker rooms. So we will be using locker room, or those proceeds, which are about $900,000. We will also be coming to the board to request ARPA funding at their September meeting. We are going to be asking for approximately $500,000 of our unobligated monies right now. And you'll all recall that we do need to obligate by the end of this year. So we are getting to be up against that wall. We do have CDBG funding, which that stands for Community Development Block Grant funding that the township is already a recipient of. We asked that $100,000 of that be earmarked to take care of the ADA accessibility improvements, because that is allowable under CDBG. We also are going to reinvest some of the prior year profits from the stadium. What the public may not know is the stadium is a profitable operation. We would like to reinvest some of the monies that has accumulated over the past few years and reinvest it into the property to make it remain competitive. Some of the other facilities that we're up against in getting teams to come here, getting clubs to come here, enticing figure skaters to want to skate here, is some of these other rinks have amenities that we don't currently have. So we feel giving all-inclusive locker rooms will be a real selling point for everybody who wants to use the facility. We also still have out there a DCD grant application for community facilities grant. We have not heard, so to me that means it's not a no yet. So we are waiting. They said July or August, and we were very fortunate to submit a strong, whether we get it or not, we had a strong application. We had buy-in from Crossroads. They gave us a support letter. We had a support letter from the Hawks. We had a support letter from Haverford Ice Hockey Club. We had a support letter from Representative Vitale. So we really did go in with a strong application. So I'm still holding out hope for that. If we added up all those funding sources, we come to where we're at right now, which is the architect's estimate, who did use a professional estimator, and it's 1.72 around. That's where we're at right now. I always say Ken Matthews of CBD has a good quote, though, that the market will determine what the project's going to be. So we really will not know until it goes out for bid and hits the street and see what the prices are. But we do have a path for funding for this. It does not include any additional borrowing. It's all money we either have on hand or hopefully, if we get that grant, we can take away from some of the other proposed funding paths, but we do have a plan to fund this when we get real numbers.
Thank you. Do any of my, is there anyone else presenting?
Ken Matthews from CB Development, who is our owner's representative. He's just going to take us through just the steps forward.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having us here tonight. So really the next steps at this point, as you can see, the plans are pretty far along. So we'll work with Joe and his team to put together the scope of work that we need to do for the public bidding process, so similar to the library that we just went through, there has to be 4 prime contracts that go out to bid. And then as part of that, the responsible contractor ordinance that was passed last year, any contract over $250,000 has to meet all that criteria. So we'll make sure that's all in the bid packages. So then we'll kind of go through over the next month here. The goal is to bid in the fall. Should only take, we have to be out to bid for 3 weeks. It has to be publicly advertised for 3 weeks. So it will end up being roughly a 4-week period. Then we would come back to you all, assuming the bids come in favorably, and as the market will tell us what it will be, get the approval in late fall. And then the idea is, award then, so we have a few months to go through submittals, get all the materials released, as we kind of go through behind the scenes exactly how we're going to get this done. We'll look at now how best to build a project schedule, and we'll put that into the bid package. Obviously, the goal is, we want to try and get this done as quickly as possible with the least impact to the stadium, knowing that it's basically a 24/7 facility. So we'll work through that and buy it that way, so that, it can still function, still operate while we're doing construction. There'll be a little bumps and bruises with it. There always is with a renovation, but the goal will be to get it done, start in late spring, and then get it done by at some point in the summer. So that's the goal of the project.
You don't anticipate it would need to close at all, the stadium?
No, our goal is to not have to do that, no. We're gonna have to figure out, and that's what we'll work on here over the next month, keeping bathrooms open, the logistics of it. There might be some temporary bathrooms that have to be brought in outside, those type of things, that will have to be built into it and make sure we accommodate everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for anyone on the board?
I have a quick question, and that's about change room 3. Is that possible to be one designated gender neutral? Okay.
I'm Robert Cohen. I'm on the advisory board. I'm actually the vice president of it. And to answer your question, yes. One of the things that we were looking at 3 and 4, I don't know how to go backwards. Do you know how to go back to that? But yeah, I was waiting if someone was going to ask that. But can you go to, 3 and maybe 4 and 5?
So 3 is this one.
3 is that, and then also go to.
And then 4,
Yeah.
1 and 2 are over
So,
there.
so what we were actually looking, and users have all different groups that use them now. I'm Robert Cohen, 27 Bennington Road, live in the 8th Ward. All different users. There are girls, there are transgender, there are non-binary, there are all different users. What we wanted to do is currently the quote overflow locker room for someone that would be not of the majority using capacity would be in that one facility all the way out in the far end of the stadium. This brings not just the one that you're talking about, but also these 2 rooms a little bit closer to the teams. They're going to feel more inclusive. They're going to have that privacy changing area because in case what's in there, there's 2 different sections so that you could have one team and an overflow, whether that's whatever. It could be a boy, a girl, transgender, whatever, can use that overflow, whatever's the not primary. And then the other team might have one as well. They're not even in the same changing area. It's there. It gives us that capacity of having people there and closer to their coaches, closer to their teams, feeling more included with the groups that they're in. And you see so much of that now. My daughter's team has someone transgender. My son's team in the past has had someone transgender in a different way. It's something that is necessary, and I think that what we tried to design will help that. As everything, you always can be better and better and better, but trying to fit within budget, I think we're trying to fit that. But yes, I agree with you.
Thank you for answering that question so thoroughly. That's very good to know.
Anybody else on the board have any questions or comments? I can speak from personal experience. The showers there are freezing, so I am looking forward to a reconstruction of these bathrooms. You can run them on hot for 30 minutes, and it is still a bone-chilling experience. So I am looking forward to the new locker rooms. And let me publicly acknowledge and thank everybody who was involved in the first phase of this work, the chiller work. I was back on the ice 2 weeks ago, as were plenty of other very happy skaters. And the ice is terrific, and everybody is thrilled to be back out on the ice. I think this concludes our excellent presentation from all of you, volunteers and consultants alike. Thank you all for your continued service. This is something we as a board take very seriously and will take under consideration, and hopefully approve the plan and start the process going.
If I may just give kudos to the two members of the subcommittee who couldn't join us tonight.
Absolutely.
Rich Caesar and Jeremy Beha. So we thank them also.
You're here. Okay, and thank you, Ms. Cuthbertson. Next item on our agenda, we will have the MS4 report from Pannoni and Associates, and our guest speaker tonight.
Thank you.
Again, thank you all.
Bridget, could you just minimize that presentation?
Oh, yeah. Good. Okay. All right, so the MS4 annual update. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It is required for municipalities within urbanized areas as designated by the U.S. Census, which is 50,000 people overall or 1,000 people per square mile. The MS4
Well,
permit.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Richard, for the sake of the listening audience, would you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Bridget
Where
Gillen.
you're from
I work for
and-
Pannoni. We're the township engineers.
And specifically assigned to and working this project, and have been in the past.
So the first MS4 permit was in 2003 and lasted until 2013. The second round was 2013 to 2018, and we are now in the third round of the permit, which became effective on March 16th, 2018. DEP has administratively extended the permit until March 15th of 2025, as of today. Part of the MS4 permit is the requirement for a pollution reduction plan. The PRP requires a 10% reduction in sediment in both the Darby and the Cobbs Creek watersheds. Currently in the Darby Creek watershed, the township has completed the Raymond Drive Basin rehabilitation, and we are currently in the permitting process for a stream restoration project in the North Brook. The word from DEP representatives over the past couple years has been that those dates are likely to be extended as well, likely through some type of consent order and agreement between the DEP and the township. But the name of the game really is that they like to see progress, which we have done with the Raymond Basin and Northbrook project being in the permitting process. And we've also had a pre-application with DEP for a section of Cobbs Creek stream restoration. So we have made progress on that over the past few years. The other side of the MS4 permit are 6 minimum control measures that are required: public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site runoff control, post-construction, BMP runoff control, and good housekeeping, which is pollution prevention for municipal-owned facilities. The The township is also required to update the stormwater management ordinance to be consistent with DEP's 2022 model ordinance. Delaware County Planning Commission did provide a model ordinance for Delco municipalities to use when revising the township ordinance. We did use this model to prepare a draft revised stormwater ordinance. We have received EAC comments and Planning Commission comments that we're currently reviewing and vetting. Just a side note, in terms of the timing, when DEP, or when Delco Planning released the model for municipalities to use, it was their intention to solicit comments from DEP. And in the past, back in 2011, 2012, when the Crum Creek watershed was going through their Act 167 process, that model ordinance was prepared and was sent to DEP, and they essentially sent them back to the drawing board. So we were really hoping to receive comments from DEP before proceeding, but at this point, we're going to go with no news is good news, and anticipate having this in front of the board sometime this fall. The township continues to be active in the Eastern Delaware County Stormwater Collaborative. As part of that program, they joined with the collaborative to educate various audiences in the township about responsible stormwater management. They have events, educational materials that the township can take credit for in their report as being part of that collaborative. Stormwater information, of course, is available on the township's website. All stormwater outfalls in the township are required to be screened once before the permit expires. This is largely complete. There's a handful of them out there that access was a little bit of an issue, so we'll need to go back and get those, but that's substantially complete at this point. The entire storm sewer system has been mapped, and one of the last requirements as part of those 6 minimum control measures that the township's responsible for every year is inspection of post-construction stormwater BMPs throughout the township. These inspections are ongoing, and they are funded by the Township BMP Fund, which provides for periodic inspections over 10 years, and that's anything from your single-family home that had a grading permit and a 1 seepage bed up to a bigger site like the Quarry or Haverford Reserve. That's all I have. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Bridget?
Had any measurable decrease in sediment and pollution since 2018?
So the Raymond Drive Basin, the credit that we submitted to DEP, they measure it in a reduction of pounds per year. And the basin, I believe, was in the range of around 7,500 pounds per year just for that. There's different ways of calculating based on the type of project, but a stream restoration project, that's per linear foot that is calculated.
And I mean, the goal is 10%. How close to 10% is?
The basin is a small part of that, but like I said, DEP is looking for progress and efforts made towards meeting those reductions. So,
Okay. Thank you.
sure, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to return to Mr. Matthews to give us the library renovations update. You know where it is?
The other.
Adobe. Oh, Adobe, sorry. All right. Thank you. We're here tonight to give an update on the status of the library. I'm going to turn it over to Raymond Petray. He's our full-time on-site manager. But the good news is I think the project's in great shape from schedule and budget, but we're going to go through some of the details and then answer any questions you all have.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Just kind of exit out just to make that a little bit bigger. Wanted to have a picture of the rendering of the addition as well as the new front, just for reference throughout this update. But just a project schedule and progress update. Work to date, so all of the foundations and the underpinning have been completed, which there's a couple pictures showing the front foundation walls, the old bank building underpinning that we'll go through here in a little bit. Second floor addition steel over the parking lot is roughly around 95% complete. There's a minor welding and detailing that they're doing right now, but the hope is that'll be finished at the end of the week. 75% MEP rough-in work. So a good majority of the existing building rough-in is finished for both the old bank building as well as the 79 building. So the majority of the rough-in is the lower level community room as well as the addition forthcoming. Most interior walls are framed and drywalled. So they started drywalling roughly around 2 weeks ago. And they're about done with both the first and second floor of the original buildings. And then they'll work to frame as well as drywall the old bank building basement as well as the lower level community room. The stormwater management system is roughly around 95% complete. That was completed prior to the steel erection that took place at the beginning of the month, mid-July. So they have a final connection point into the township's system that they'll do here in the next few weeks. Some upcoming work, the front entrance steel will happen here in the month of August. So we're tentatively waiting on that final delivery date, but hoping to have that this week or next week. Enclose the second floor addition, so the facade will go up, so the cold form framing as well as the windows, sheeting, waterproofing, and then the EFIS panels will follow here in the next few months. Continued interior work for the drywall, M&P rough-in, and pouring of the concrete deck. They actually did pour the initial deck to the second floor addition this past Saturday. So they'll work to install the radiant flooring there, and then they'll pour the topping deck for that area here in the next few weeks as well. As Ken mentioned, the project remains on schedule for substantial completion on March 7th of next year. And then some future items in terms of AV furniture and punch list. That work will happen roughly around that time, March through early April of next year, and then tentatively targeting a mid to end April of 2025 for the grand opening. So that'll be forthcoming in the next few months as well. So as mentioned, some pictures of the update. So this is the front entrance new foundation wall. So the new glass and steel will sit on this wall. So this was kind of the last remaining piece of the foundations work that took place. So this was poured, I believe it was not last Friday, but the Friday before. So they'll waterproof this, and then they'll work to backfill this area back to grade. This is a picture of the second floor addition. So this, as per the rendering, this is the guts of it, the superstructure. And then the front room here is for the gaming room for the teens with the higher sloped roof. So this is an actual location on the second floor if you're looking toward the middle school. And then this is if you're looking toward Greenway. So you can see that it's a good amount of usable square footage, which in totality is the 5,000 square feet. So it's a pretty good impact in terms of more space for the library. This is just a picture of the existing parking lot. So this is where the parking will be, and then the drive aisle and parking on the back side. So this is the old bank building underpinning. So you can kind of see where it initially started, where the columns are. We excavated down, and they just poured this slab not last Friday, but the Friday prior as well with the foundation wall. So they'll look to clean up these walls, get them waterproofed. Then they'll do the layout and start framing. And then this is, the usable square footage for the staff in the lower level. This is not a fancy picture, but this is the new shaft for the elevator in the lower level. And then the background there is that foundation wall previously mentioned. When we gave a update earlier, we had shown the flex spaces, just some framing of that. So since then, the door frames as well as the window frames and the drywall has been installed. So this is on the first floor as you walk in, the room's directly in front of you. This is at the living room. So this is the meeting room above the living room, just the reframing of that wall, as well as the new windows as well. And then this is the conference room on the second floor for the young adults. So as you come up and you look to your right, this is that conference room prior to going in to the young adult area and then subsequently into the gaming room. And then this is just, again, not fancy, but just wanted to show you a typical mechanical, plumbing, and electrical rough-in. As you can see, ductwork, you have your piping, you have your rainwater conductors, sprinkler, low voltage, and electrical. So just kind of everything that kind of goes into making, the renovation of the space. So I'll pass it back over to Ken for the project budget update.
Thank you, Brandon. So just kind of reminding everybody of where we were. So back when the project was approved, the budget was $21.8 million. That included the $1 million allocated for the 1 mil house to purchase it and then subsequently turn it into a parking lot. So the original contingency that was included in that budget was the $1.1 million that we have shown here. And if you all remember when the bids came in, mostly the general contractor did come in a little over budget. So really from day one, the contingency was eaten up, quite a bit just from being a little over budget from the prime contract awards, as well as the builder's risk was actually quite high. The underwriters did not like the underpinning, so it was a lot higher than we would have expected and budgeted for. So that being said, we essentially started the project with the $661,000 contingency. So here we are today. We're sitting at a contingency balance left of $226,000. So you can see, a little over $400,000 has been allocated. So this is all known costs that we know of to date, whether it's been spent or not. We put it in our projections so that we have a true, pretty much day-to-day budget of what's going on. An actual snapshot. I mean, even since we put this together, that number's changed a little bit. So, that being said, everybody, I'm sure your question is going to be, what's left to do. So, I think when we presented last year, the biggest risk to a project is coming up out of the ground. The underpinning was very risky. Just not knowing what you're going to find. It's a 100-year-old building. So the fact that we're through that, the foundation work's complete. There was poor soil on site, but we had monies built in on purpose because we knew that already into the contract. So there is money for those things already allocated. The fact that the site work's mostly complete, and the fact that there are some repairs to the existing bank building. So one of the last pieces that is still a little bit of a risk or concern, the structural engineer, we just took cores, we cored through the roof of the bank. So we're awaiting that evaluation. So that's something that could come up, as a cost if there are structural issues. So again, that's really our biggest risk left. Everything else is inside the building. There are going to be changes where there's some errors and omissions on the drawings, which is standard in the construction world. So we'll go through that. But we did want to point out, just highlight some change orders. There's been numerous change orders to the project, which is typical. So we just wanted to run through a few here just to so you can get some examples of what's going on. So the board decided that we really didn't need electrified partitions. So it was decided after a lot of discussion, let's get rid of that and save the project $21,000. Then we had a great roof consultant on the project. They're always very thoughtful. Some of the detailing, so they came up with some more credits back here of another $8,000. And then probably the biggest credit to the project, you can see here, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth with the library about a gas fireplace. You know, we had done some projects. I'd done a project with Penn State right here at the Brandywine campus. And really, the electric fireplace gives the same ambiance and effect, and it's obviously a lot less money. So it saved $42,000. So then we get into things like unknown. We're digging up the basement, and there was no, you know, we don't have any drawings of the bank building, and we discover an oil tank under the ground. So obviously, you have to deal with it. We have our environmental consultant consult, and you know, there's $18,000 that's spent for that. In addition, as we're digging up in the basement, the groundwater in this building is, I don't know that I've quite ever seen like it, I have to say, where you dig in a trench, they pump it out, and the next morning it's filled. So something had to be done there to put under slab drainage so that we have pumps running all the time, keeping that water out and, you know, not bleeding up into the basement floor. So the next item here, the infrastructure for future electric charging. It wasn't really discussed much, but I think when the One Mill parking lot came to play, we talked to the township some more, I mean with Dave and Amy, and it seemed to make sense, hey, before we put in this brand new parking lot, don't want to rip it up in 3 years and say, let's cut through all this new asphalt and put in new electric. So, you know, although it's $20,000, you know, it costs a lot more than that if you did it in the future. One of the other big ticket items that came up not too long ago was replacing this main existing switch at the switchgear in the basement. So there was a lot of studies done over the years and testing done that all the equipment was in good shape. But after further conversations, even with Pico, the electrician, the engineer, you know, if you're really doing this 40-year renovation, we should replace this switch. So there was a lot of discussion, and it's one of those things that if the switch didn't turn back on, you wouldn't have power, and you'd be stuck getting basically a tractor trailer generator on site at the tune of 10 or 20 grand a week. So it just made sense for the long term and for the good of the building. And then there was, this last one was kind of a leftover from when the budget was far less than it was now, trying to salvage as much as possible. Frankly, it kind of slid through the cracks, but basically everything in this building was brand new. The building's completely gutted. So the shelving, there was some old shelving in the living room area that was left over. And, you know, the shelves are all warped, they're worn. We're putting in all brand new casework everywhere else. So again, the group, status of contingency, looking at the project, it made sense to replace it. So that's why that cost is there. So there's a lot more changes than that, but wanted to at least highlight a handful and as we go through the project and how we track things, and then obviously answer any questions you all may have.
Yes, I would just like to thank you guys, because I haven't received that much calls from the homes on Mill or the the other streets there, and every time I've reached out to you when I did get a complaint, you guys fixed it all. So thank you for keeping them all up to date about all of this stuff as well.
Sure.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
What are the potential roof concerns with the?
So, you know, you can see that there's a shingle roof that was built over, the original roof was flat, and at some point, 30 years ago or so, it was decided to go over it. Not sure why. So the structural engineer, we did have some repairs going around the inside, around windows and whatnot, but then he came out 2 weeks ago or so. Yep. And just, we had scraped off some sections of the roof, and he didn't like the way the concrete looked. So it's concerned maybe it's aged or weathered or has water issues. So that's why we took these cores, and then we'll find out
That
what it's made of.
Fairly close.
It could be, yes. That's the type of thing. If it was, it could be, for sure. But we'll know that hopefully in the next week.
Thank you.
With the exception of the roof, are there any other big ticket items left where you are used to seeing, major forays into the contingency?
No, as I said, there will be little things inside the building, where something they pick up on something may have been shown wrong. I'll give an example that's not on here. A ceiling tile was specified incorrectly. So that was a change order to the project. The specs are 2,000 pages, and a lot of times you'll have errors and omissions in there. And the architect and the design team, frankly, has done a great job. Normally, you can ask, I'm sure John can speak to it as well. You want to be under 2% of any errors and omissions. And remember, an error is an error, but an omission you would have paid for anyway in the bid. But we're tracking we're under 0.5%.
Yeah, it's like 0.33.
0.3%. So, so even though sometimes you'll go through the chain and say, wow, that seems like a really silly error by the architect, it's well within the standard, and they're far below what you would expect out of that. So being under 1%, the other projects, I'll give you an example. Linwood was getting close to 2% at the end of the day. A couple other projects, 1.5%. So they're well within that for what they're designed. So they frankly have done a good job.
We, last 3 meetings or so, we've done a number of change orders, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but a few of them were pretty large, and they seem to all be concentrated around electric. Is that normal? Am I remembering that correctly? Anybody want to?
Well, so that's this one main one here, especially.
Yeah, but I thought we had other.
It was the switch last month, the
Switch.
67,000 switch.
You have infrastructure for the emergency antenna system. That was another
That's it,
$18,000. That was an add alternate that wasn't accepted at the time because we weren't sure what the scope was going to be. What's some of the other big ones?
It's just the bulletin.
That's the big one.
Yeah, but the big one is the switch as well.
Oh, and then we had another 13,000. There were some modifications around the sensory rooms that was done. So that's one of the things, as you see those pictures, everybody's looking at plans in 2D. And so when we laid out the building, we're snapping lines where walls are going to go, and walking with the library, the sensory rooms and the study rooms right next to it just were far too small. The architect was trying to keep a view, but it wasn't good use of real estate, I'll say. So really the team decided it made a lot more sense to expand the room, add a tutor room. So that's where that came. So you do have some owner changes, decisions like that are made.
Just for the public's benefit, though, to make it clear, you're comfortable with where the project is now and with the remaining contingency of the 226?
Yes.
And is that number inclusive of the change orders that'll be part of our agenda next week?
Yes, yeah,
So it's 226 moving forward through April.
correct.
It's
And,
also
and if the roof's no good?
the holds for 1 mil.
And yes, it includes everything. So 1 mil isn't 100% designed yet, but we did price it so that we have real pricing from the contractor. So that cost is included in this budget. And there is an overrun of the $1 million of that. So now that we have that overrun, it's going to be $80,000 to $100,000 overrun. That comes out of the full project contingency.
So what about, I guess I'm very concerned about the roof.
Sure.
So basically, if we approve all the change orders that are on the agenda for next week,
Right.
you're down to 226,000. We still have, 6 months until you're trying to be open. The money is dwindling quickly. I know you said the roof's a big ticket item. Obviously I'm not going to hold it to you because you got to find out what the exact work that needs to be done and the cost. But when you say big ticket item, give me a ballpark.
If there was a true structural problem, you're tens and tens of thousands of dollars to repair it. If it's something where they can do it in localized areas, then it wouldn't be as bad. But if there's a real structural issue, you could be $50,000 in a heartbeat. Just a real practically speaking.
And I guess
So-
just to kind of dovetail on Commissioner Holmes' kind of question, the switch that we approved last month, the 67,000. I'll be honest, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that one. Just because that's something that in projects like this I would expect to be seen or put into the initial build out.
Sure.
Are there any other, without sitting here and playing a blame game or anything like that, are there any other types of MEP aspects to this project where we could have a similar, we thought it worked, but now it doesn't work scenario?
No, so we went through all of that. So the switchgear was the main thing, really the only thing that stayed in this building. Again, there was numerous reports done in 2016, 2019, then again a year ago, where it was tested, shut down, in coordination with PICO and a third-party testing company, and they found no issue with it, and they didn't report or recommend on replacing it. Now, could the electrical engineer maybe have pushed harder, playing Monday morning quarterback to say, hey, you probably should replace this? Sure, in hindsight, could probably say that. But I think it was one of those things, they're trying to save as much money as possible in the initial budget, and if it was reported in good working order. So that's kind of where that landed. And then, in further conversation, you start nudging, the engineer, okay, if we're going to spend money for the next 40 years, it doesn't make sense. So a lot of the existing gear is going to stay. So you have a switch that just turns it on and off. Then you have the gear itself that are all the main circuit breakers. Some of those are getting replaced, some of them stay. You can still get parts for them. There's a ton of buildings. Chatham Park that we're doing has all original switch gear, not all original, but definitely some. So there's buildings that it's totally fine. So that's why it becomes that internal debate. So I think we came to the good conclusion, especially knowing that something that old could just fail and there's no recourse. One circuit goes out, you can fix that, there's a workaround. The main gear, if you can't turn it back on, that building is shut down until you get it. So I think it was a good decision at the end of the day.
And is it not true that because that gear is so old, to repair it would require somebody to special make the parts?
So, yes, some of the parts do have to be custom made, yes. Yeah, you're
that
not
would-
going and just buying it off a shelf. It has to be made.
And that would increase the amount of time we would need auxiliary generators
Yes,
at
there-
$10,000 to $20,000 a week,
Yes,
correct?
you're not getting anything off the shelf if the switch went bad. I think it's, how long was this switch?
This is
18 weeks.
Talking about losing power, since in Haverford Township, we're a little notorious about losing power. When you were talking about the slab drainage, the adjustment that was made for the water coming in the basement,
Yes.
I remember when we approved that and we talked about that. The one question I had for you is the pump that you have down there that's constantly keeping the water from rising into the basement flooring. I'm assuming that there's some sort of a battery backup contingency if the power is lost in the building? Or at least I would hope.
So actually, there's going to be two backups. There is a generator that is going to be added back into the project after consulting with the township administration. And they do have a water-based pump backup because the battery backups just, if for that kind of water, they just don't last. So there will be 100% backup for it.
So you just mentioned adding back in a generator. Is that
So
going to be a
that's
change
already-
order coming our way?
That will be, and it's already in this budget.
It's already in the budget, though.
It's already projected in this budget.
Okay. Since I have you here, I mean, I'm going a little bit out of the agenda order, but since I have you here, you're probably the best person to answer the question. On the change order for this week, about the antennas in the basement,
Yes.
can you just explain a little bit? Can you just clarify for me exactly what those are for?
Sure.
And the need
So-
for them and what they're for?
Absolutely. Well, it's the radios that these gentlemen are wearing over here. So the buildings sometimes have horrible service, so it's pretty much code now in all new buildings. We put it in Linwood. It's going in Chatham. It's going in here. It's an antenna infrastructure, and we just did it actually in the Willow Grove Mall as well, so that when they walk through the building, they have no dead service of their emergency radios.
Okay, so that's
there's
just
a
for the radios.
frequency that's going to be updated soon. It's coming soon. So right now they're on X frequency and it's being updated to a new, I assume, stronger frequency in the next year or so. So it's that infrastructure for that system. Because the basement in the library, there's no cell phone service. And it's not a cell service, it's just an emergency radio service. Most places now it's part of what's installed, normal infrastructure.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
When do you anticipate the parking lot will be completed?
So the parking lot, we're gonna keep the construction laid down pretty much till the very end. So the parking lot, I know it has to go through some approvals with the township, of course. Hoping in September, October, get the final design, then we'll price it. get the final costs, and then realistically, March. You know, we'll want to do it kind of in that time frame with, as the building's getting finished, all the AV, and then just, it's the very last thing to do. It should only take three-ish weeks,
Okay.
4 weeks at the most to get done.
It needs to be done before the library can,
It's part of the substantial completion of the library opening, that's correct. So by April 1st, it will need to be done.
Mr. Chairman, I could add a little bit to that. Working with Ken, we've submitted it needs a PennDOT permit. So we submitted on behalf of the township for a driveway permit on Darby Road. That went in about 6 or 8 weeks ago. We've done because Ken mentioned we're not going to go for public bids. It's going to be a change order, so we're preparing construction drawings.
Correct.
Which makes our job a lot easier, frankly. And we also have to do a stormwater management system too. So we're in the process of permitting now, and the process of designing a stormwater management system. We'll get progress prints over to Ken and his team at some point so they can maybe refine the pricing a little bit. But there'll be progress prints.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to say thank you for making this presentation to show us how well the library construction project and expansion project is going. It is really exciting that it is targeted for a mid to end of April completion with a grand opening. I hope shortly thereafter. So just thank you for all your hard work and conscientiousness and being careful with our township dollars.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your continued efforts. Next on our agenda, do any of my co-commissioners have any commissioner committee updates?
Yeah, just to note that the Finance Committee met on July 17th to discuss where we are in the current calendar year, the end of the second quarter, and then also to discuss the upcoming budget process.
Thank you, Commissioner McCluskey. Anybody else reporting on any commissioner committees?
Mr. President, the Personnel Committee met on July 30th to discuss a personnel matter.
Thank you, Commissioner Cavender. Any other reports? Hearing none, we'll move on. Deputy Chief Hagan, welcome back. We look forward to a boring and quick crime update. Yes.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. In the month of July, we had 9 criminal arrests, 194 traffic citations, 23 non-traffic, 27 written warnings, and 369 parking tickets. We had 1 motor vehicle theft occurred on July 30th. Keys were left in the car, and it was also part of the same series of events where cars were going through that night. They found the keys and the car was stolen during that time. That was in the 1500 block of Robinson. We had 20 thefts from auto over the course of the month. They're bunched in series in the beginning of the month, and then in the middle of the month, and then at the end of the month, all vehicles were rifled through, unlocked. Luckily, no keys were in them, but they were all throughout the towns, different areas. We had Linwood, Tyson, Greenview got hit, David got hit, and Melrose. So there was all a bunch of different areas. Then we had 5 bicycle or scooter thefts during the course of the month, and we had 2 canine uses. Tomorrow night we'll be having National Night Out here. Depending on the weather, we're playing it by ear. They're calling for some severe storms, but we're going to try to get it in. We don't have a rain date, but it'll be from 6 to 9 tomorrow night right out here in the lot. It'll be a fun time like it is every year. We hope to see you all out there and for the public to come out. So, any questions?
Any questions for Deputy Chief Hagan?
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Quick enough?
That was excellent. All right, next week we have several ordinances, resolutions, and purchases and change orders that I think we went over. Are there any items here? The first ordinance is second reading of a land lease agreement.
Yeah, I do have a question on that, of just if the property is sold in the future, how does that affect our agreement?
If any sale would be contingent upon allowing that agreement to continue. There was thought as to the area where it would be included, that it would not impede any travel ways and not stick out further than it needs to stick out right now. But if the agreement has, if it is transferred, it would run with that transfer, and it would have to be contingent of that sale, as it is a public safety concern to make sure that those towers and that equipment remains at that location.
Yes.
And just to follow up on that, if correct me if I'm wrong, but the equipment that's going, I'm in the 911 equipment that's getting put outside as part of that land lease at the old township building, that's directly attached to that tower, right? So I mean, if the tower goes away, technically that would go away, or vice versa. Is that correct?
It's correct. I believe right now it's located in the basement.
And they're moving it outside
for greater accessibility for the county equipment. I believe at the same time, they're also going to be moving the township's equipment, so that's a benefit to the township as well. But you're correct that that equipment is located there because of the tower, and it goes with the tower.
Any other questions or comments on this particular item? I skipped over, and I apologize for it, the budget schedule. Commissioner McCluskey, do you want to just run through the public our 2025 budget adoption schedule?
The schedule's primarily similar to what we've done in many of the years in the past. The manager will present the budget to the Board of Commissioners on or about October 31st, 2024. We'll get a copy of it. That'll be the draft. The first meeting where the manager will make a presentation to the public will be November 18th, 2024 at 7 o'clock. Budget will then be made available. The advertisement will include a summary of the budget submitted by the manager, and then the second and final presentation / adoption of the 2025 budget was scheduled for December 9th, 2024 at 7 o'clock.
Which is one of our regularly scheduled, that's our regularly scheduled December
The second
meeting.
The second presentation adoption is always part of our regularly scheduled meeting. The November 18th meeting is a standalone meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner McCluskey. We are also considering next week a traffic ordinance, resolution, an ARPA resolution rescinding a previous resolution, and then a resolution replacing it about cardiac defibrillator systems. There is preliminary land development for the Chatham Park Elementary School. And also the dedication of ARPA funds for police speed trailers and data collectors. Resolutions also providing for the dedication of ARPA funds for recreation purchases. And also we will do purchases for the EMS system, the police department, and the recreation department. Under consideration next week will be Public Works. We'll have a contract for its annual salt contract, and the Haverford Township Free Library will be considering the change orders that were discussed earlier. And also for our consideration next week will be appointments to a new committee that we are creating for purposes of naming township property, and also the long-awaited Senior Advisory Board appointment from the 6th Ward. I don't want to spoil anything, so everybody hang on till next week. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of these items?
I have a question. Are we going to learn more about the Chatham Park Elementary School addition? Will someone speak to us about that? I guess I just haven't been through that process before, so seems like a pretty big project.
It's an excellent question. And sitting here today, Commissioner Cavender, I don't know the answer to that question.
We can
But
have
Jamie
the,
Jelosian can speak to
we can have the applicant come and present prior to the meeting, if you would prefer to have that. We do have the plan available tonight.
So,
In our packet.
It's available for us to project tonight.
Oh, okay.
I have digital and hard copies for you if you would like to review it as well. But I have options for you,
Okay.
whichever you guys prefer.
why don't I think we should present it. I think it should be presented next week.
Typically, it's
obviously-
presented and then at the time that it would be approved, and then that we can make sure that the applicant or the applicant's representative, which is Ken Matthews, stays for the meeting and does that part. Would be helpful.
Excellent. It'll be good to see him again.
Just a comment on that, I don't have any problems with their plans, but they came to the planning commission. That was the first that anyone in the neighborhood knew of their plans. I had no idea what their plans were. Nobody who lived close there, unless they had kids in the school, knew. So the school district, it's not Ken Matthews, it's the school district is doing a bad job of communicating with the community.
Well, why don't we hammer them next week over that? And seriously, I'm not kidding. I mean, we all get punished for their tax increases anyway. So I mean, let's go ahead and give it back to them.
As a comment to that, they are formally requesting waivers under our SALDO, which would require notification of property owners, 200 feet.
Can I just
saw
talk
that.
to that for 1 second? So the original, in our code, in our subdivision and land development ordinance, we do require notification of all property owners within 200 feet of the site. They originally requested a waiver of that, and were asked by the planning commission to go ahead and provide those notifications. So this was eventually achieved, just not at the time prior to the very first planning commission meeting, which is the typical process for that. A waiver like that can only be granted by the Board of Commissioners. I think that moving forward, my suggestion would be to have that kind of a waiver come before you prior to the planning commission meeting that they would appear at, to have that question answered. So it's just a little out of order for this one.
Can I ask a question about that? If it was out of order, was there an opportunity for neighbors who did receive that notification to come in front of
Yes, there were two.
a body
There
to
were two
speak?
more meetings that they were able to attend after.
All right,
the
that's really
notification.
important.
Yeah, the planning commission told them, you need to give the community an opportunity, but they needed to be told. That was the issue.
Yeah.
Uh,
So Jamie, I noticed there's a couple of other waivers on there. I don't remember where I was looking at it. But so I would like to know a little bit more about that before we actually vote on it next week. I don't want to put you on the spot, and if you want to talk afterwards or send me the digital copy, but not having been through one of these before, I would like to know a little bit more.
Sure, absolutely. Does everybody want to discuss it right now, all of the waivers, or it's up to you?
Yeah, why not? Let's at least
I know
hear
it's
about it.
late,
It's not
but-
late. It's not late. It's a meeting. Look, it sounds to me like a number of things did not go properly here, and this isn't a good way for the two largest governing taxing bodies in the township to work with one another. So please tell us everything you know about this.
Okay.
And be prepared for next week's presentation.
Also, revise the resolutions for land development, and as a part of that, have included every waiver that they would be requesting from you in the resolution. So that would be on page 4 of your resolution if you wanted to just go through each of them. I believe I'm missing one. There's one on at the end of page 3.
Help the public out. Describe the project and tell us what they're doing.
It's so there's 2 building additions, 2 additional parking areas that are being installed, and 2 subsurface stormwater management systems proposed. I can't, although I've been a part of the planning commission meetings, the the real ins and outs of the building additions. The purpose of them is for expanded interior space, I think for library in the front and lobby administrative areas in the front. And then the proposed building addition in the back, I believe, is the classroom space that they need. I could be incorrect on that. Proposed parking areas are increasing, the circulation patterns are changing. And then with that impervious coverage, they're proposing 2 stormwater infiltration systems. I'm just gonna come up. I'm just gonna come up there.
Great. And for the record, we understand, and the public should understand, that you are not here as a representative of the school district, but just happen to be the only person here that we can all turn to and get answers to these questions. So do not mistake anyone's brusque manner with you or anything like that as aimed at you, but rather just trying to get information in the limited amount of time we have left available.
All right. We can get this.
They do have drawings on their website similar to what we just saw for the library, like that shows the structure and the overlay of the space as it's going from what exists to what it's becoming. And my understanding from it is that the front entrance that runs along the where the tree line path is into Chatham Park is extending out a little bit, and both first and second floors are being renovated. As a general.
Yep, it's exactly right. There's 2 proposed building additions. This is that front entrance area, and that'll be a 2-story addition. And then this back area that's being also added to. There's going to be a 10-space parking lot kind of associated with that. And I believe it's over 20 spaces in the front, 6 of which are going to be ADA. Handicap accessible spaces. So a significant amount, excuse me, of impervious being added. So with that, stormwater as well. As for the waivers that are being requested, they are from the subdivision and land development ordinance. So the Board of Commissioners would grant those. There are 6 waivers requested. So one of them is to submit like a preliminary / final plan. So it would be considered as one all together so that they come through the process one time. The second one and the third are to not provide required plan details within 200 and 2,000 feet of the site. The fourth.
That's to people living within 2,000 and 2,000?
No,
So those
these-
are actually, and this is an important, sometimes waivers are actually what's going to be built. Sometimes waivers are just what's shown on the plans. So obviously what's just shown on the plans is less important if our staff feels that's appropriate because it doesn't impact the final result. It's just the level of detail. So they're saying, let us use the plans that you see here instead of us showing an additional 2,000 feet or 200 feet around the site of those details. Sometimes people will just use an aerial photo from Google Maps and drop something in and not the actual formal plan. So both the second and the third and the fourth waiver only relate to what's shown on the plan details around the site and not to actually what is being built.
Okay, so 2, 3, and 4 have nothing to do with notice. 2, 3, and 4 have to do with how much extraneous stuff they have to show us that they're not doing anything to?
It's more or less the scope of the project is focused on this actual parcel that the school sits on, rather than any of the streets outside of the school site. And it's a 9-acre site, so it seems a kind of reasonable request in this respect.
Mr. Walco, quick question. So the resolution is going to come mechanically. The resolution comes before us as the resolution, but each of these individual waivers, do we vote on the waivers individually and then the resolution? Or like mechanically, how does this work?
My experience is that boards do different things depending on what waivers are being requested. Some just vote for the resolution with all of the waivers. Some will say, well, let's take the waivers one by one. Does anybody have an issue with any of these waivers? When there are waivers that people don't have problems with, They could be granted, and then others could be denied. You could deny a waiver request and still approve the plan. They're going to have to go back then and revise that plan to meet that waiver, assuming that they can. It's very easy for them to, all right, we'll show you additional 400 feet around, and then they'll submit a plan that shows that. The two that planner is going to be getting to next, it's an interesting waiver request because it's at this point sort of a partial waiver because they open up the bag. You can't put the cat back in the bag. They already had the planning commission meeting, but they didn't do the notice before the planning commission meeting. They did do notice in the middle of the planning commission meeting, but technically they're not in line with the code because it wasn't before the first planning commission meeting. So there's probably really no way they can meet those waiver requests, although because it's against what the code says, but they sort of fixed that problem already, but technically it would still be a waiver.
Okay. Thank you for, this
Correct
is
me if I'm
the
wrong.
first time I've seen
That's
one of
it.
these myself,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Is the school district asking for anything here that we don't typically see from anyone else trying to develop property?
I've never seen, since I've been here, this is actually the first land development application that I've seen come before you. And I've been here for about 2 years. So you've had a lot of subdivision where you're just dividing the lot but not approving any building. But this is the first time in a long time that you've had an actual building project here. That might have additional waiver requests that are prompted by the development. This was the first time I knew that there was a notice requirement for property owners within 200 feet and how that notice is being done. So it's really two waivers. One of them says you have to give notice. The other one says how you get that notice. So since they initially didn't provide the notice, technically it would be both. Again, how often that has been asked for a waiver in the past, I'm not sure. But that was the one I haven't seen typically. And a lot of codes, to be clear, a lot of codes don't have any notice requirements for land development applications in other municipalities. So that's somewhat unique to Haverford, that there's extra notice given to those neighbors. Unlike a zoning application, the municipality's planning code doesn't require notice given for land development applications.
Oh, right, but I mean, I think every one of us have been asked to go to a planning commission meeting, whether we do or not, and be there with a bunch of neighbors who aren't in favor of, work that's being done on the house that doesn't require a variance, but does require a trip to the planning commission. So I guess the issue we have to consider is whether, as a body, we just have to consider whether we're going to hold, what are our standards in terms of granting these waivers, and are we going to hold the school district to the same standard we hold everybody else?
Well, I think ultimately they did do what
They did
they
this at
the
the-
planning commission told them, you need to
Yeah.
do this. And so
And they then went back and had a whole nother planning commission meeting where these
They
folks
had
had
two.
the chance.
2 more meetings.
More meetings.
yes.
So I think.
everyone
I think,
who-
yes, everybody was notified, and then they had 2 more meetings. I think Jerry's initial point, which I also heard about, was that there wasn't an initial notice and people were caught off guard initially, but they have been notified at this point, and there was 2 more public meetings. In addition to the school,
Stupid question.
in addition to the school board meetings where they discussed it.
Do they even need these waivers?
It's in September too.
Yes, because the requirement is to do it 10 days prior to the initial planning
For the very
commission
first.
meeting. And so they missed that. They can't go back and undo it,
Oh.
but they also didn't meet the code. So they still are required to have a waiver.
Are we allowed to determine that they did satisfy the requirements as opposed to give them a waiver?
I think you would need to take the impression that it's not a substantive issue, that it's the first meeting. Because I'm assuming the code says that it has to be the first meeting. Technically, they didn't do it before the first meeting. That doesn't seem like it's that important. I think the code was read with the assumption that there usually only is one meeting to the planning commission where that would be considered. So the question really is, do they have a hardship? And I would submit that they do have a hardship because there's really no way that they can come in line with that code now, but they've corrected it after the fact.
I would feel more comfortable not giving them a waiver and instead determining that they ultimately satisfied the requirements of the ordinance. Because I don't want somebody going back then and determining that in 19 instances, we didn't give waivers of notice provisions, but yet we waived it for the school district.
I mean, if you'd like, we can revise this resolution to just make remove those two waiver requests and then just make a notation in the conditions, just stating what actually had occurred. And if any additional substantive changes occur, they'd have to go back, not to anticipate that happening, and provide that notice again.
I mean, I'm just one person here, but if anybody else feels kind of the same way I do, I just don't feel like if we don't need to give a waiver of, I think, a fairly important thing, which is notice, and can otherwise determine that notice was satisfied because there was a second and a third meeting, I would definitely prefer we do it that way.
The other option is I'd be able to revise the language from the waiver requests to note that they did appear twice, and as a result of that, that's the reason why the waiver would be granted. So if someone was to look at this resolution in the future, there'd be a little bit more specifics as to the reason why, instead of a blanket waiver and not really knowing the background of it. Either way, it would work. I think that the intent has been fulfilled through the meeting requirements, through the diligence of the planning commission on making sure that would happen.
I think that's a good solution because giving notice is a really important process for people feeling like their government and all the processes are being very transparent and accessible to everybody. So I really like the way this needle is being threaded, that we are not granting an exception, but there are these contingencies that allow us to move forward with the way that you, Mr. Holmes, and you, Mr. Walka, have described.
And it is common to give the reasons why. So what I'll do is I'll rework the resolution to provide language explaining how notice was given, even though it wasn't prior to the first meeting, but additional notice was given. And I'll mention in the additional plan requirement details, just to, again, highlight the fact that it is a large property, and because of the acreage and the self-contained site, that's why those waivers are granted.
The earlier waivers. Yeah, all right. So I think a great place to start, if you just add two paragraphs to the whereas provision that say, whereas at the first meeting, the planning commission notice had not been satisfied, they called another meeting and instructed them to do it, and they did it. And then we, in terms of the waiver, I think is the township satisfied that the notice provisions of this section were met? And we could say yes. As opposed to
Right. I can make it
allowing a
more
waiver.
of a technical
Yeah.
and not a substantive issue.
And I think it matters. Look, if they had one meeting and they were just asking us now, I would have to go back historically and see what we did with other people before I could just say you're fine. Does that make sense to folks?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
I'll
let's
make
proceed
those
that way.
revisions and circulate to the staff and to board.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this item? Anybody else have any questions or comments on any of the other items that we have mentioned on our agenda?
The difference between the two resolutions are the cardiac defibrillator. The one where,
Sorry, give 1 second. First, Amy had one more thing to say.
I just wanted to clarify, do you want the applicant to come and do a formal presentation for next meeting?
Have the applicant prepared to, if we need it,
Okay, great.
be great.
Yeah, I think it would benefit the applicant to come and talk about it so that they can keep communicating to people, because it may not be the same audience that they're speaking to at the school board as the people who might be paying attention to a township meeting.
Excellent. Mr. McCanns, Director McCanns, can you tell us the difference between the rescinded ordinance, the rescinded resolution and the new one?
Yes, it's got a couple facets to it. Right off the bat, the monitors that we were trying to purchase 2 years ago have yet to clear FDA approval. They've had several hurdles. They've had some issues. So I mean, our ARPA money is going to expire, but before that, the monitors are going to, they're already at the end of their useful life, so we need to upgrade. There are excellent units, the ones that we're purchasing now. However, I dropped from 3 units to 2, so we won't have a backup, but I'm satisfied that the company and the protection plan that we're buying will give us a backup if need be, within hours. Also, that 3rd unit was going to be moved to the medical support of the police department with Dr. Wong and one of the medics that are assigned there. They are okay with using a monitor that Dr. Wong has via the physician responder vehicle at Narberth, which is assigned to him frequently. So he's okay using the monitor that's there rather than ours.
Let me ask, as we approach the kind of closing of the ARPA window, I would ask you to be super vigilant in these next couple months and err on the side of asking us for another if you need one.
Okay, fair enough. And I appreciate that. So we were able to take the monies that we're spending on those 3 monitors, purchase 2 excellent monitors. One's here. I'll give you a rundown. It's a pretty sweet monitor. It's a nice system, but I'll give you a demonstration afterwards if you'd like. But we also came to understand that the 2 litters that we have, the ambulance cots, what we transport patients on, they're getting to the end of their useful life as well. They're about, I think they're 11 years old now, and they are expiring. So we are able to purchase for this just about the same amount of money, the 2 monitors and 2 cots for what we would have spent on those 3 monitors. So that brings us up to a current monitor, 2 current monitors in our units, 1 per truck and a cot per truck. They're the power load litters, which you got a demonstration on, I think, tonight on how they load. They're saving backs, but they're much safer for the patient as they're much less apt to tip. Thank God, knock on wood, we have not had that incident, but it is frequent in our business that they can fall over on their side. So this is all in the spirit of protecting the patient and the providers who are caring for that person. And those litters will be delivered within days of your approval next week, and the monitors within a couple weeks.
Great. Jerry, did that answer your questions?
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions on that issue?
For 1 less monitor, we're getting the additional cots. So
Yes, exactly.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions or comments from anybody? All right, we are scheduled for next week. One last announcement. It is August 5th. I typically have not been at this meeting in the past because of vacation schedules or we haven't had work sessions. So I think this is the first time in 27 years that I had a chance to wish my oldest son a happy birthday on August 5th, 1997. 27 years ago, we prayed for a family and God answered our prayers and he's still our answer. So happy birthday, Jack. That's all I have. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned.